Hello, welcome to Art Show. I'm Craig Stover, and today we have with us Syd Carpenter. Hi, Syd. How are you?
I'm fine, Craig. Nice to be here.
Thank you. I'm so thrilled to talk to you today. Looking at your work, I was just blown away by it, and I am thrilled to be asking you some great questions about your work. First, I wanted to take a look at some pieces, and I was hoping we could just talk about these before we really begin the interview. So again, I went through your website and I just selected pieces that I thought were just stunners. This one was the first one I actually came across, and I love the color, I love the forms, I love everything about it. What is this one about?
Okay, first off, this is from a series that I've been working on for several years now, and it includes a clothespin. And the clothespin, and it's an old clothespin. It's one of those vintage wooden ones. And it is representative of my mother. I think of this series and I call it the Mother Pin series. And the Mother Pin for me represents her and my time as a child with her. I still have the clothespin bag that she used to hang my clothes up on the line in our backyard. And now, whenever I look at that object, I think of her. When you look at clothespins, they have this kind of iconic form to them. They look to me very regal and very feminine. So to me, I love that combination of the domestic, this kind of mundane object that also embodies this kind of elegance and once again, this kind of regal feeling. So I love the emblem of it. So here she is, the mother pin, and she's wrapped in a basket and surrounded by these kind of bean forms. And it references her ability to provide one hand, but then on the other hand, she's bound. So there's this kind of dichotomy here going on in this image. So there's the regal aspect of it, but then there's the capturing, but there's also the productivity.
When I first read about the clothespin series that you did, I mean, the first thing that popped in my mind, because I'm a Philadelphian, was the Clay Oldenburg clothespin,
Right.
which is a different form. But I loved how after that was built, they started talking about, well, actually, it looks like two people hugging, right? So I was taking that into account looking at this, but I know the kind of clothespin you're talking about, and it's actually a much nicer form, I think. The shape of it.
Yeah, it doesn't have the mechanics.
No.
This is a very tactile, soft kind of object. It doesn't have that the metal, the lines are not straight. This, once again, here's another one of that series, the mother pin. And there's this kind of voluptuous quality that I like about it. The satiny surface of it. But there's also this sense of dissolve as the surface starts to break down and drip and liquefy. So yeah, these have, for me, they have a lot of different connections to the human figure, to domesticity, of course. So the utility aspect of it, but at the same time, the fact that it's loaded and sensual.
I love when I first saw this piece, not to reference another artist, but I started thinking about the forms that Martin Puryear uses, especially around the head, how you've made the middle of the figure a little bit bulbous. It's just so approachable. It gives so many entryways for people to look at it. I thought it was a stunning piece. It was just great. I'm curious to know about like the materials. Are these earthenware, or what kind of material is this?
Well, once again, it is ceramic. It's clay. Okay. It's hard clay, but not in the traditional sense that it's glazed or anything. Right. The surfaces on this particular piece are graphite, actual acrylic, and I'm polishing. And so it is it provides a kind of well, it suggests metal in certain
Mm.
ways. So there's yeah, in terms of its sense of how you approach this thing, it is an object, but obviously it references these kind of organic materials and processes.
I was curious about, what you do on top of these because some of them almost look like a patina that you've been able to, rub them alive with these wonderful mixtures of slight colors.
Well,
Um,
I entered the becoming an artist through 2D processes. So
mm,
painting, watercolor,
hmm
drawing, those kinds of things. And clay itself to me is one of the most receptive surfaces when it comes to those conventionally associated 2D processes. It's absorbent. It's something that can be sanded. It's something. So to me, using combining those kinds of materials on clay is a natural outcome, just a direction that I would go in because that's how I entered in it. And
hmm hmm Do you ever have to put like a sealant on them or anything? Or
well, it depends on where they're going to go. Yeah, you like anything, if you were using charcoal or something, you would want to put something down to keep the charcoal in place.
right.
So something like that. This piece is actually fired though. The
Mm,
surfaces on it are ceramic surfaces.
mm,
So black copper oxide. There's a orange slip underneath that. So that has spent a lot of time outside that piece.
yeah,
This
I just love the shape of this and those legs, and it makes me think of tardigrades, those tiny little bugs, water bears.
Oh,
But
okay.
it's so alive. I just
Well, I'll tell you where this shape comes from. This is from a series that I did called the Leaf series.
hmm
I'm a very I garden. I mean, it's part of it is
hmm
essential to what I do as an artist is to
hmm
be and to create in the garden. And so I'm looking at shapes, particularly leaves in this case, and imagining what would happen if a flat leaf inhaled and became something three-dimensional, which is
mm,
this is. So it is a leaf shape that now has been that is filled. It's visceral. It's very, very physical. It's got flesh. It's got muscle. And it turns into something that looks like an animal that's
hmm
moving. So I like that, taking one thing and translating it through process and just imagination and it becoming this other being.
hmm
And so that the moving around and the animation of it.
hmm Speaking of animation,
Um, this is a piece that's about let's see, it's about 5.5 feet in length,
hmm
and it is called "A Snake Without a Head is
mm,
Just a Rope," and it's once again it's a translation from an African flag. There's a tradition in West Africa where instead of engaging in physical competitions, they actually produce these textiles, and on these textiles they applique different sayings.
mm,
So looking through some of those textiles, I saw one that said "A snake without a head is just a rope," and I thought, well, what would I make in response to that? And
hmm
just making this serpentine helix type shape, and showing this kind of confused, very, very kind of just a tangle at the top,
hmm
traveling at the bottom, and creating this object that appears to be in a perpetual motion. That's an important part of my making, is to make objects that defy the impression that clay has to be a
hmm
static, heavy, sedentary thing in order to survive, because it's great,
right.
it's fragile. But I'm always in the process of trying to subvert that and defy that through my forms.
hmm
Make things look like they are they could change their configuration. If you turned your head away, you'd look back and it had changed and turned into something else.
Yeah. I've noticed that about your work, that it looks like it has both potential and kinetic energy at the same time. I mean, they look like they're moving. I mean, we happen to land on one with wheels, but yeah, just that it works for me. It
Well,
really does.
that still fits into the brief for me, is that they rarely sit on flat bottoms.
Yeah.
Thing is, I like to get air underneath my clay. I like there to be the sense that, it's penetrable, that it rests on specific points as opposed to being always on a flat bottom.
I love the little negative shapes that pop in there. Really lifts the piece.
Yeah, it gives air. I mean, I bring air, light underneath the piece. So that's a lot of the work that I do has to do with trying to insert that sense of movement, weightlessness, and it engages all of its dimensions.
So the bases on those negative shapes that are in there are they're just right for me, because as I know, as you go walk around the sculpture, it's never the same on from two angles, and it really sort of shifts, and those negative spaces really help with that because they shift as well.
Well, that's sculpture to
Yeah.
me. My need in sculpture is that you can't know the object from one perspective.
Yeah, but not everybody does that. I've seen a lot of flat sculptures.
Yeah, sure.
Or it's only exciting from one side, right? So these are fascinating on all sides.
Yes. Yeah. Well, that's it. I mean, for me, you have to walk the piece.
Yeah.
Here you have this object that is three-dimensional. So what does that mean? You have to engage the dimensions. You have to walk around it, see it from different perspectives. They tend to be objects that have accumulated several objects within them. So identifying, or at least discovering, those relationships between the parts.
I see the clothespin popped in. Is this a part of a clothespin piece, or it's got just clothespins in it?
It's got clothespin pieces. And actually the slide that you have shown is the beginning of the piece. This piece has evolved over time.
Oh,
so
yeah.
In this piece, it looks like it's 6 feet. And that's what it was at that time. And now if you were to see the piece in its present state, it's about 8 feet, and there's more stuff on it. So
this is a weird question, but have you ever made jewelry?
I have never made jewelry. No.
Because this would make a fantastic brooch, or your clothespins. It's just an odd question, I know. But
No, you bring to it just your ideas about, relationships. It's like whatever reminds you of. I mean,
it would kill it because of the scale, but I think
yeah, I think it would be, scale is the issue. This is another one from this kind of spiral series that I was doing. And the idea of movement. This piece is called Blood Ties. And I was actually looking at toys. If this was turned on its side, it would be something that a child would these kind of elastic toys that kids have with a little ring on it, and they could stretch. But this now is more visceral, the idea of that color and the splitting and the surface, but then there's this pod and seed on the other end of it. So it's combining a lot of things. But when I look at it and I think about movement, I think about internal systems. I think about how parts evolve. I did a lot of a series that I called the evolving line, and take something something that's lineal, or just something that extends, and see what happens as your eye moves along that extended line, as the line changes.
I picked this one because I love color and I love your use of color with these the subtle low saturation earth tones. I guess
I
do your colors come from the fact that you do a lot of gardening and you're around those colors all the time?
Well, I'll tell you, if you were to examine my colors, there's really only one color plus black. And
Mm,
color is this kind of tomato deep blood red.
hmm.
And then everything is coming out of that subtle relationship. And so that red with the metallic black, that's where it's coming from, and any kind of gradation that can happen between there.
Is it a red or is it like a yellow or a burnt umber or a yellow ochre or
It's a, I don't know. It is a red that's a brick red.
I
It's a
love the color. I think it's fantastic.
yeah,
So I want to start with our formal interview questions. This is a question that I love to start out asking artists. Just what was your first exposure to art
well,
as a child?
my mother was an artist.
Mm,
And so everything she did was affected by an aesthetic.
mm,
She arranged her house, she gardened, she dressed beautifully. So the appreciation of looking at things and appreciating things through this eye, this kind of need to have things be in harmony and to look at things in terms of shapes and textures and colors. That was my exposure. Just being in my mother's house.
Did you always sort of know that you were going to become an artist, or did it evolve, or was there a day when everything changed?
No, no, no. I was always encouraged to be an artist. That that was recognized and respected. It was not dismissed. It was not suggested, oh no, that's just a hobby. No, I was recognized from a very early age as an artist.
Hmm, that's fantastic. That doesn't happen for a lot of the artists I know.
Absolutely not. But the irony is that academically I'd done very well in school, and so I was offered a scholarship to the University of, well, to enter their pre-med program
Hmm.
and to become a doctor. And at no point did my mother hesitate or express any concern when I said I wanted to continue on as an artist.
Hmm.
And imagine, back in the 70s, for a young Black woman to say she's going to be an artist and not become a doctor.
Hmm.
And
Right.
yikes, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was, she clearly respected who I was.
Yeah.
And so that choice was never in contention.
So a curious question about your working processes. I'm curious, do you keep a sketchbook?
Oh yeah, I have stacks of them.
Have you always worked in sketchbooks?
I do. I mean, not that I adhere to what I sketch.
Right.
It's something that I like to visualize things in the beginning, even though once I start actually making, it's pretty improvisational.
Okay. So you have a basic idea, and I mean, do you have to sketch out? Do you usually sketch out everything that you're going to make, or are there times when you just go?
I just go. Mostly I just go. I mean, the sketches themselves become just ways of putting something concrete down to um, provide not necessarily a guide,
Hmm.
but to actually have an image that says this is real.
Hmm.
This is viable, and let's just try it. And but I it later on, I mean the sketch, I don't have the sketchbook near me when I'm making, because when you start to make something dimensional, it has its own requirements and its own dynamics and its own personality that you have to work with. The materials themselves begin to provide information that the sketch cannot.
Mhm.
But it gives me a sense of, well, this, I put that sketch down, and that sketch says, okay, this is kind of where I'm going, but then I'll see where it ends up.
As you're making your work, do you ever find that you suddenly realize that the work needs to go in a different, or do you ever change the work as you're making it, or do you ever make something and then discard it, like, nope, this didn't, it failed pieces?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that's the process. If I have things that I want to make, and things that I have to make because they're required, because maybe it's because of a commission or something that needs to actually appear in a certain form. Otherwise, it's all speculative to me. If I'm in a series, I can respond or refer to one that I did before, because I want to alter or improve or just investigate something that happened while I was making that other one. So it's always, you're engaged in the making, and outcomes are determined by, well, why did you start making it in the first place? Do I need it for some assignment, or I'm just pursuing an idea, and I get clues from previous work. It just it depends on the day,
Hmm.
time, whatever is happening. And in answer to the second part of your question, things fail. It has to be understood that it takes as much time and effort to make a bad one as it
Hmm.
to make a good one.
Hmm.
But you have to you continue making it, and
Hmm.
then you make those decisions, and then you can edit, and you can adjust,
Hmm.
read, and it's all about time. You don't get paid for your time.
You should.
No, it doesn't work like that.
No, it does not.
It's
So in one of the things I was thinking, looking at your works, there's a lot of ceramic work in there, but you also have the inclusion of, there's some metal work and there's some woodworking in there as well. Do you craft those items as well? Do you craft everything, or do you
um,
ever farm out?
this metal. Oh yeah, I do. I don't weld. I don't do any of that stuff. In terms of sketches, um, I will do very, very detailed sketches, and will have stuff fabricated.
Hmm.
Don't blow glass, because I have included glass. And so, but I work very closely with the crafts people who are doing it. I have to be there and
Hmm.
say, "Put it here, bend it that way."
Hmm.
So those are, there's actually no woodworking in my work. There's
I thought I saw some bases that looked like they were made out of wood, or
base.
maybe I'm thinking of something else, or maybe it
Oh,
just
oh,
looked like
okay.
wood.
Oh, okay. Okay. There is a pedestal that was made out of wood, yeah, or a few pieces. Yeah.
Hmm. I was just curious, like, what your shop looks like, how much.
Well, the shop itself is mainly clay, and for watercolor and 2D stuff.
Okay.
Right.
Have you ever shown your sketchbooks? Have you ever, like, publicly shown them?
No, I haven't. I'm going to be doing a retrospective in a few years, and maybe some of those will come out then.
I
But
look forward to that.
yeah, the sketchbooks themselves are, I never think of them as um, displayable things. I know that there is an interest in that, because you get a sense of the thought process. I mean, 'cause
Hmm.
I have a lot of writing in my sketchbooks, and just grocery lists, stuff that show up in the
But
sketchbook.
it's fantastic to see. What I've learned is that, audiences often love to see process, because it
Oh yeah,
gives them a foothold into the work itself.
but
And even the grocery lists are important.
right, yeah, the letters to people.
Right,
Before the computer was a big deal, and email, I would
right.
put the letters first, and they're all in there. Just to-do lists are in there. So it is a representative. It represents your life in a lot of ways. It does give clues as to, what my priorities are and what's on my mind at any given time. They're not dated, so that's kind of interesting. Sometimes I have to, I have stacks of these things, and
Right.
when did that happen? When did that and then going back and reading something that I wrote and thinking, I thought that,
Yeah.
and just who is that? Who wrote?
Right. Right. I think exhibiting the sketchbooks might be just as good for you as it is for everybody else.
Oh, it is,
Yeah.
but the way they're displayed, they can only see one page at a time.
Yeah.
So they don't get to handle it. So they don't get to see the
The
actual.
whole shebang.
Yeah.
You often work in series, and I'm just curious, do you do one series at a time, or do the series overlaps? You ever
They
end a
overlap.
series? Yeah,
Yeah,
they
they do
overlap.
overlap. The Mother Pin series is ongoing while I was doing the sculptural farm portraits. So yeah, and it's just something that is happening simultaneously. It's layered. So yeah, it's not always just I'm just working on this one series.
Right.
If I get an idea for a mother pin while I'm working on a farm or a bowl, yeah,
Yeah.
I'll jump over and do that too.
Have you ever like officially ended a series, like said like, okay, that's enough of that, or could you always revive them?
I can always revive them.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going back and retrieving things because when you re-examine and reassess work, you see something that you may have dismissed or
Hmm.
ignored or not acknowledged. And now at a different time in my life, I can look back on something that happened and say, oh, that I can use.
Hmm. That's great. So I've actually got one final question for you. Our time zips by real fast, I know. But this is a question that I love asking a lot of artists. I actually usually end my
Mhm.
conversations with this. So it's a simple question. Sometimes artists find it as a stumper, sometimes they can glide right through. What does making art do for you?
Well, for me, that's an easy question. Do for me, I don't separate it as this other thing
Hmm.
that I engage. It is who I am.
Hmm.
So I do for me. If I weren't an artist, I wouldn't be. So
All artists seem to answer the question in a different way, but they all mean the same thing. That's what I really enjoy. Like, I have to make art. It's me. It's who I am.
right, right. Do for me. It's oftentimes it's a source of pain
Hmm.
and anxiety,
Hmm.
but it's not something that I'm going to separate from.
Yeah.
And I'm not looking for the payday on it.
Yeah.
It's nice when there is a good payday, and art has provided me, if I'm going to be straightforward, has provided me with a very good life.
Yeah.
I mean,
I can see it in the work. It's
no regrets on that on any level. The best things in my life are because I am an artist.
Sid, it's been absolutely fantastic talking with you today. I mean, I'm thinking, maybe in a year's time I'd do a part two because I have more questions now than I
Um,
had in the beginning.
I,
But
li- I like talking about it. I like engaging it. There's that whole thing, fear no art. I'm always
yeah,
amazed that folks get threatened by it. And I think,
yeah,
no.
that's arts education. Well, we can get into that later. But anyway, I want to thank you very much for stopping by today and talking with me. I really appreciate it. I want to thank everybody who tuned in. I want to encourage you to like and subscribe to help support this channel. And if you have questions, you can always put them in the comment section after watching this, and I can pass them on to Syd. That's fantastic. So again, thank you very much, everybody, for tuning in today. And thank you, Syd. I
No,
really
thank you,
appreciate it.
Fred. This was a pleasure. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Bye-bye.